views here of Bonds from the front and the side on a home run that he hit. So I'm just going to kind of play through it. In the beginning here, we can see the pitch. He actually pulls this thing into McCovey Cove, into right field. But if we look at the pitch, he kind of reached for it, right? His timing wasn't spot on. He was a little bit early. So if we look at this, the pitch was 86 miles an hour. So I'm not sure if that was a changeup. I'm trying to look at his hand, the pitcher's hand, or it was just a fastball that didn't do anything. But the big thing with Bonds, looking from the front, you can see where the pitcher is. The pitcher breaks his hands. Okay, so as the pitcher breaks his hands, you can see Bond's hands kind of go back, and then as he's bringing his arm forward, that's when Bonds hitches. So you can see what I want you to look at from the front here is watch the knob of the bat and watch his front knee. You'll see how they kind of compress and go together. Okay? So as the hands come down, the knee comes up. Then as the knee comes down or the foot comes down, now the hands come back up to his launch position. Okay, so we can see this pitch is, somewhat away, but look at how he's kept his front shoulder down and in at heel plant. Even though his front hip has started to open, his upper body is still back. His hands are back. So his torque is really, really amazing. Then as he comes through, you can see him kind of sink down. See his head drop just a little bit after heel plant? That's a good sink right there. If I put that line over his head, he'll sink down a little bit. And then he reaches for this pitch ever so slightly. But if you look at the angle of his bat, we talked about his vertical bat angle. If I put a line on that, he's at 28 degrees, 27 degrees. If I put a line on his shoulders, it's almost 40 degrees. It's 38 degrees. So if you're constantly taught, hey, your bat has to always match your shoulders, right? If that were the case, and he's at 38 degrees, and then I put his hands in the same spot, and then I bring that to 38 degrees, I'm trying, what is he going to do? He's going to foul that pitch off instead of hitting a home run. So that's where his top hand comes in. The stronger your top hand and the more control you have over your top hand, the less barrel drop you'll have. Because if his hands are there, which is a good height. You can see, like I said, he had to reach for it, but his hands are in a perfect spot right above his belly button there. Okay, so his hands are in the right spot. But again, if his bat vertical angle was, regardless of how much he's swinging up or down now, if his bat vertical angle is too steep, then he fouls that ball straight back. Don't we see left-handed hitters do that all the time? Okay, they do because they have a deep bat vertical angle from maybe trying to get balls in the air too much. So, if you look at that, it's very, Ted Williams was very similar to that as well. So if we look, I'm just going to draw that line again at contact. And then right after contact, it's not quite parallel. So he had a little bit of flip with that right hand. But most importantly, here in his power V, I don't know if you can see it, but that barrel's still down here. Okay, it's still slightly underneath his hands. That's all of those moves help him stay at the bottom of the ball. If he got flippy from there to there, or from there to there, and his top hand, his barrel flipped up here above his hands, he would hit a ton of ground balls to the pull side. And he would definitely hit this ball to the pull side. Okay? So look at his front foot. One of the other things we can look at from the front here is watch his front foot. He lands closed. He always did. But as his front hip clears, watch his front foot come off the ground and spin. That's a lot of front foot movement, okay? Which means he's got a lot of weight sitting back on his backside, okay? So he's a guy that can sit back a lot. I'm going to fast forward here to we can see where that ball landed, and that guy in the kayak got it. Guess that was home note in 738. You don't see that very often. If we go to the side, so now we're really going to be able to see the hitch, right? So here's where his hands start. Okay, then he drops them all the way down to his hip, like his hip flexor. Then as his foot goes forward, his hands go back up. And if you stop him in the launch position, right about here, okay, at heel plant, notice how steep his shoulder is. Look how his front shoulder is down and in. That's a really good. When your shoulders are like that, guess what? Your chest is probably going to be facing back here. If you stride and your front knee opens, guess what? Your hips are going to start to open. So his hip line is like there. Okay, so this angle is his torque angle, which is on an outside pitch. X factor, torque angle, whatever you want to call it, is in the high 30s, right? 35 degrees or so. Yeah, pretty darn good. Now look at how high his hands are. Okay, so we've only said this about, I don't know, what is this, our 100th episode? So we've probably said it 100 times. It doesn't matter where you start, but if your launch position is bad, we need to change things. It doesn't matter if you do a somersault from the on deck circle. If you land in this position on time with your top hand somewhere between your top of your ear and your chin, your front shoulder down, the weight on the inside of your back foot, and your front knee open a little bit, well, then you can do a somersault from the on deck circle. Okay. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I don't care what your rhythm and stride is, as long as you get your foot down when that ball's, roughly 12 feet from home plate. Now, from here, watch his back knee. See how he really sinks into that back knee. Notice here's the knob right in front of the elbow, or even with the elbow. The back comes down next to the shoulder, kind of looks like everybody else that's successful. Okay, he starts pulling the knob out in front. Again, you can see his heels a little bit more behind his toes, which is you can see he almost spins on his back foot a little bit. Okay, remember when we did that test, that ground force reaction test, when your back foot moves like that, you actually lose energy. You don't have as much energy. But guess what? It's not all about energy. Sometimes it's about being simple and getting the ball in the barrel and being strong enough to do it. Okay, if he was 135 pounds, yeah, that's probably not a good move for him to do. But at 240, I think he was okay with it. So lastly, we kind of look at his impact position. You can see his left arm extend through. A lot of people talk, you got to have that power L at contact. You don't. Maybe you have to have power L somewhere, but it's not always at contact. So you can see he extends through. Boom. His top hand is probably pretty straight here. And I bet he's 160 degrees or something. Let's see. 150. So 148 with his top hand right at contact. And then after contact, look at that sucker get all the way straight. So this is what I was talking about from the front. Notice how the barrel is straight, pretty much horizontal out from the knob of the bat. What a lot of players do if their bat vertical angle is too low is they flip it up here at the end. And if they flip it up there, instead of hitting the bottom of the ball, they'll end up hitting the top of the ball. So that's a really great position when he extends his top hand through into his power V. And you can see his back heel is not high at all. Like he's borderline collapsing on his backside, but he's still got his hips through. A lot of times if players squish the bug, one of the issues, and I wouldn't call this a big squish, but it's definitely not coming forward, is this stripe. See how this stripe comes down and in like this on his back leg? Most players that squish the bug, meaning they're pushing with the back foot instead of sinking with the back leg, that stripe will be like facing forward. It'll be like this. So anytime you can get your knee inside your hip, okay, if I draw a line up there, we're good. Okay, so that's something to look out for you coaches out there. If a player's got too much weight on their back foot, then this leg won't have like at point of contact. If I put an angle behind his hamstring, behind his knee. Okay, I'm trying to get there, but my marker's kind of messed up here. Still messed up. Let's see if I can switch it here. Yeah, it'll work this time. So if you kind of trace that back hamstring and then you trace the calf, you can see he's 113. That's higher than most. Most major leaguers are 90 to 100. Okay, so the more your back heel lifts, the higher your back heel lifts, the more this knee goes down and in, and then the smaller this angle gets. Okay, so is it a problem at 115 or less? No, it's not a problem at all. But you'll usually, if you have a player that's trying to push off their backside, you'll see that back leg angle pretty straight. It'll be that number will be 130 to 140 degrees. So anyway, really cool stuff. The last thing we can look at is his front foot. Okay, we didn't really look at that here, but when he lands, and he's actually landing more open here. I'm wondering if he's cheating on this pitch, but you can see that his front foot is somewhat open here. A lot of times he would land and his front foot was closed. I think this is later in his career, obviously. Home run 738. but because of probably mobility in his front knee and hip. But that's why you used to see him spin. So if we look at his front foot, you'll see it spin open. See how he spins kind of on his heel and his foot comes off the ground? The only way this foot can come off the ground, watch his back foot has all the weight on it. That's why his front foot slides until there. And then when his back foot finally comes around, all the weight's in his front foot. So he's got kind of some, probably some mobility issues there. But it all comes down to, I don't know. I just use the word mobility issues because a lot of people say, oh, if you don't have perfect mobility, you can't be, a dominant hitter. But you know what? Some guys hit. Some guys are just really great hitters. And even though his back foot wasn't perfect and his front knee and hip mobility weren't perfect and his back leg had to swing out to catch because his front leg didn't have any weight on it, let's not overcomplicate moves. Let's make sure that we create some energy with a small weight shift. We rotate with our body. We make sure we're in a proper launch position, and then we make sure that our top hand stays through the ball. I would say Barry Bonds did all those things pretty darn well.